our schedule to, actually it's also representative of just supporting what it is that we do. You know, attendance of these things makes us feel good, I must say. And then also it's a respect for the people we have here to share their time with us about what they do. So just some basic housekeeping. Everybody's figured out a way to get something to drink. There's food. Restrooms are down the hall and almost to the end, but just before the end, there's a right-hand turn down another hall, and the restrooms are down there. Thank you again for all coming. And Lisa, are you going to introduce our distinguished panel?
Well, I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Okay.
So.
All right. So we'll take it away. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Terry. And again, I really, really appreciate you guys for coming, especially on this night. But I think it's a wonderful time to get a couple hours to get our thoughts off of what's going on with the election and focus on what's, really important. Take it home and what's important to you. So thanks again. If you could each just, and I'll just start with Justin, if you could say your name, your business, how you got into the field of social media marketing in whatever respect that you do, and maybe just, how do you define social media for yourself?
Okay, yeah. My name is Justin Albano. I am a digital marketing strategist, but I come from a very social media focused background. I work for an agency in town called Bonfire Social Media. And help them grow into a full digital marketing agency. And let's see, what social media is, I guess, I hear people say a lot, I wonder if this social media fad's gonna go away. And I like to say, the platforms might change, but social media is really our connections to brands that we lost along the road somewhere. And it's a way for companies to reach out to their customers specifically and interact with them. And hopefully provide some value. So some companies do it very poorly, some do it all right, but to me that's really what social media is that connection with the company, not just the brand, but that personal connection.
Great. My name is Yasmin Nguyen. My company is called Earl Media, and what we do is we create video content that helps build relationships. And my personal belief and why I started this company is that a conversation can change a life, and that the power of conversations can change the world. And we're in the business of helping people capture, share, and discover those meaningful conversations that then enable business and other opportunities to happen. And so with regards to social media, I really think social media is such a broad label of so many different tools and ways in which, as Justin mentioned, we connect with our audiences and communities. And so part of that is bringing it down to the level of what are those specific tools that best meet our goals. And I think some of the questions that we'll be addressing this evening is focusing on what are those goals that social media can really be effective.
Nicole?
Yeah, hi, I'm Nicole Weber. I own SpotColor Studio, and we're a full-service creative agency. My background is graphic design and advertising. And so, let's see, I've been designing for close to 20 years, actually, and was in corporate America for a while, and then after the dot-com bust, I started SpotColor Studio. So we really focus on a lot of the graphic work and the brand and creating that look and feel and the image of your company. And then from there, we build websites, we do, collateral, brochures, trade show booths, pretty much all of the components that a company would need to market their company. And as far as social media, that's just one more tool, and with our clients, we ask a lot of questions to figure out what is the best tool, and I'm sure we're going to get into that a little bit more tonight. So it really is one more thing in the toolbox, social media.
Hello, my name is Salar Salahshoor. I am the owner of a company called TurnClick. It's a full digital marketing agency here in Portland. And my background, I started with in finance. I was a financial analyst, and kind of slowly moved toward marketing in different roles, working for web companies, and really loved it because so much of digital marketing today is driven by numbers, and we track and measure everything with web analytics. So it's very much data driven, and so that's sort of the philosophy we incorporate in our business and the clients we service at TurnClick. We really try to show them the value and help drive new traffic to their website, and that's really what we look to do, is help companies grow and get more leads and all of that. And so, what I think social media really means to me, the big thing is that it's about a dialogue. It's a two-way conversation. It's not like traditional media where you just put out a message and hope people hear it. The real metrics for success around social media, I think, are, how many conversations are you having? How rich are those conversations? And it's very difficult to track and measure, but I think it's more about dialogue, less about monologue. So that's...
Somebody had just told me it was kind of like being a good neighbor. You kind of like, you listen a lot, you kind of tell them a little bit of stuff, but it's just like that nice little back and forth.
Yeah. It's really, if what I'm hearing from all of you, it's really a conversation. It's a different media for being able to have a conversation, whether it's not in person, but can be just as personal and touching just as many people as in person. So thank you all for sharing that. I'm gonna start again over here, and we'll switch it up throughout the questions. But for Justin first, what would you say a business needs to do before thinking about even starting social media?
So much. Because social media is really one of the last things that you want to do once you have everything else figured out. And a lot of it, just kind of high level, is really understanding who your customer is, what your brand is, what you have to offer, what kind of pain points your customers are going through, and when setting up a full marketing strategy to address those pain points, to reach your customer. And social media is something that comes into play once you've already done all the groundwork. Once you have a website, for example, once you have some traction, once you actually know what kind of content to put out. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot about content tonight, because content is really the important thing. Social media, as some other people have mentioned, is a tool. And if you don't have the right content, if you don't know who your customer is, social media is going to fail every time. So there's really that, and that's a big part of why everyone's here tonight, not just to focus on here's how to do social media, because social media becomes more of a natural thing once you have the building blocks laid and you really understand what you have a real marketing plan in place, and you have you have a brand, you have a message, you have a value proposition, you have a website, and once you have those core kind of components in place, then you can start thinking about, okay, well, what do I do in social media?
Would you guys agree? Are there certain
Absolutely.
kind of specific points that you should get to before you really broach the subject of social media for your business?
When we start with a new client, we're like Justin said, we're starting with the brand. And that's a lot of times people think, oh, that's the logo. Well, that's part of it, but the message is another huge piece. And your brand is it's like what you put out to the world and how the world sees you. So there's a lot of components, that are part of the brand. But honestly, before we even start looking at the brand, it's like, who's your target audience?
Yep.
That's where you start.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of questions that have to be asked. And if you don't know who the target audience is, you don't know how to, your social media isn't going to be effective, because if you don't know where your people are playing, for example, maybe they hate Twitter, so,
Yeah,
Would you agree?
Yeah, that's so true, because part of it is your audience may not actually even be online. They may still, receive postcards or whatever that media is that they connect with. And so having a great understanding of, what's important to them, how do they communicate, what do they care about, those are all functions that drive what sort of tools you may use in social media once you get to that point. So that clarity on your customer base.
Yeah, it's part of a more full picture of what you're doing. Well, most of the people here are working or supporting specifically small business.
Mhm.
So I kind of want to bring that focus directly to small business. So Salar, I'll come to you. How should a small business approach engaging with customers via social media?
Well, I think one thing I'll add really quick to the last conversation was, I think there's so many social networks and social channels, and I think the point everyone's making here is that there's probably some online social network that really fits well with your business and your demographic, your customers. But there's so many, and I think people just are so eager to start building that social media presence, and they focus on Facebook and Twitter because they have the largest total number of people using those services. But there are hundreds of different channels. I think that's part of the challenge, is finding the ones that really fit with your business model, your industry, and focus there. So they may have a much smaller base of users, but you can be so much more effective and targeted, especially when you have limited amount of energy and time to really just focus on key networks that fit your business. So I want to add that in there. As far as small business, a lot of the clients that we work with are, I'd say, considered small businesses, and social media is probably, like Justin saying, it's the last thing you sort of focus on, and that's not always a good thing. It's just that it's hard to measure the return on investment, and I think that's why we usually will push clients toward more direct channels like paid search advertising, so using search engines, AdWords, paid ads. Those channels are direct, and you can measure every dollar and measure the value you're getting, the number of phone calls you're getting or leads you're getting. And I think people, especially when you have a tight budget, you appreciate that. You know exactly what that return is, and so it's easier to justify the cost. And that's been my experience. So I'll leave it there. I think pass it on and see if anyone else has.
As a small business, a lot of the challenges that we face are the limited budgets and limited time, as well as our goals are to grow our business. And what are the things that, based on that limited budget and limited time, that we get the best results? And there's a lot of tools and methods out there that we can, depending on what our situations are, blogs and other things that are free, but also one of the considerations that we have to have is are those really effective? And I think one of Salar's point is part of that is considering what are those metrics in which you measure the effectiveness of what you're doing. So is it number of likes? Is it the level of engagement? And having clarity on if those metrics are the ones that matter to you from that audience as well. And so it's really part of what you're doing right now is really important, is actually getting out there and sharing and learning from others that have been through this field to distill down all this information into what could be applicable and important to you given your limited time and your budgets.
Mm-hmm. The other thing about time too is you can use social media as one more place to put the content from your newsletter or the content from your blog. So if you're already doing some of those other kinds of marketing things, then you can just put a little link up there or a little post or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so you can leverage your time that way, because we're all, I'm a small business too, and I am busy, and so, it's a way to, you don't have to be writing content for this and writing content for that, and then also, spending 3 hours a day on your social media too.
Yeah.
So.
And along those same lines, I always suggest to small business owners, the very first thing you need to do is look internally. And I like to say, start macro and go micro. Well, what do you really want out of your business? Do you want a business that you can hand down to your kids someday? Are you looking for you have an exit strategy of some sort? Are you looking to really grow it aggressively and get some sort of capital infusion? And really let those decisions kind of dictate what you're going to do and what kind of decisions you make, the more micro decisions. And kind of let that set your strategy. It doesn't make sense to be doing certain things if your whole goal is to just have a stable business that your kids can run someday. And then the second thing I always tell people is talk to your customers. They're your greatest resource right now. and really learn from them, why did they come to you in the first place? What motivated them to reach out to you, to ask for your service, your product? What were they going through? And then what was their experience like the whole way through? Not necessarily just as so you can get better, but they had an experience with your whole industry. They probably talked to your competitors and really understand what they went through first and foremost.
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that part of this is a certain mindset too. It's a shift between the mindset between advertising and marketing. What back in the day we'd call the spray and pray method. You would create some sort of marketing piece here. You'd invest in it. Then you spray it out. Through your channels like radio, television, or direct mail or print. And then you would pray that someone would see it, and then you would pray again that someone would care about it, and then you'd pray one more time that they'd do something about it. Well, with social media and the internet, the whole dynamics of that has changed, and so part of that mindset that we would want to consider is it's about that building that relationship and that engagement. And how do we do that? Is instead of doing social media, instead of doing videos, instead of doing Facebook, you think about ways in which you would share who you are and what you're currently doing. Create that level of transparency so that people see what you're about. Because once people discover what you're about and they really connect with what you're about, then that opens up the doors for more business, rather than try to manufacture marketing messages out there that you hope that someone's going to care or be impressed by. And so that's really a shift in a mindset with regards to content creations. And then once you've created that content, figure out what are those best channels to reach that audience that matters.
And I'm just going to follow up for you, which is, since both you and Nicole kind of alluded to old forms, new forms, would you say that social media really replace other more traditional forms of marketing and advertising? Yeah, go for it.
I don't know that social media actually replaces, because there's always going to be a need for advertising. Traditional advertising will shift and change in terms of how it's being implemented, but the main purpose of advertising really is to build that awareness. The challenge with that is that to build that awareness, at some point in time, you have to have some pretty significant budgets to play in a certain type of field here. There's other ways of building that awareness, but that, the advertising model, I don't think is really going to go away. It's just going to shift. And social media is going to play a more important role in a different capacity then. So
right.
they
And
play
with
different roles.
your social media too, you're not just sitting there like, buy from me, that's kind of frowned upon. And so you want to put, your message out there, and you want to be top of mind, but it's not like, the ad in the newspaper that says special, 10% off, whatever. So it's different. And like Yasmin said, I don't see, traditional advertising like totally going away. It's definitely shifting, but I don't see social media like taking the place of that.
Yeah, I'd say that traditional media is still very effective in my experience as far as looking at television and radio. I think more so with local companies, radio is very effective in driving awareness and traffic to your retail store. If you have a physical establishment, it's probably one of the most effective. It's harder to measure than online advertising is, but that's part of the risk I guess you take with other forms of marketing. But I think it's still very effective, and it probably will be as long as people are listening to the radio, as long as people have a television. There's always going to be those forms of advertising. I think it's definitely shifting more toward the web, and you see a lot more people that don't even pay for cable anymore. They opt in for Netflix and they watch YouTube, and so there are definitely large media companies going to the web, but that just means that the money's going to shift from Comcast to YouTube, but it's still going to be a video advertisement, right? It's still going to be a commercial. So
there's been a lot of statistics and stuff coming out. There's a great online publication called eMarketer.com, and they do a lot of statistics on digital marketing. And one of the interesting things that came out recently was that people are much more accepting of sales messaging, so the traditional advertising on television than they are online, on social media and email. And so that it doesn't say that social media is failing. It really speaks to the fundamental shift that my colleagues alluded to. That people don't want the old school messaging on online forums. They really, in marketing terms, we say, it's a shift from outbound marketing, which was that spray and pray method, to inbound marketing. And inbound marketing is all about, once you understand what your demographic or your customer goes through and what those pain points are, it's all about providing value in that buying cycle. So there's a reason someone is looking for your service, whatever it may be, or your product. And you can almost give away the secret sauce, because at the end of the day, if it's a service company, people have to do it. So they'd rather understand what's at stake and what the components are, and then pay you to do it. If it's a product, they want to know why your product is so much better than everyone else's. But it's not about, look at me, this is why you need to buy from me, or come have me work for you. It's really about, here, let me help you. I understand what you're going through. I'm going to provide this value to you. I'm not going to ask for anything in return. I'm not going to hit you over the head with sales messaging. But in return, I'm forming a relationship of trust with you. And when you're ready to buy and you're looking for something, you're going to come to me because you know me and you know that I'm providing value to you off the bat. And that's what that fundamental shift is. And will social media totally replace television? No, it's not going to. But there is a shift going on right now. People are sick of old school messaging, of people just hitting them over the head and constantly telling them, buy from me. And even television these days, you have to be really clever. Nicole's a creative agency. I know both these guys do creative concept design and stuff like that, and my current agency, Summit Projects, does as well. And it's getting harder and harder in the more traditional media and online with this old school messaging. We have to be really clever on how we do it, because just the old school of this is my product, these are the features and benefits, no one cares anymore.
Yeah, go.
For that part, I think part of it is figuring out, your goal is to build awareness, which advertising does really well. And especially if your product is a commodity where there's not much of a decision-making process, it's just like, I just need to know about your product, then they're going to make the decision. Then advertising works really well to build that. Social media also does well to build awareness, but the component of social media that really is effective is affecting the decision-making process, that much richer depth. So if you're in a more advisory type of role, if your business has a story to share or something that's really unique, social media is a very powerful tool to influence that decision-making process in addition to the awareness component.
One quick thing I'll add to it was, to Justin's point about the research that people are more likely to, take in messages from traditional media that are like, what was it that you said? It's like more.
Well, the hard sales.
Yeah, hard sales messaging. So it makes a lot of sense because those other channels, radio and television, it's all passive, right? You're not necessarily looking for something, and it's about attention-grabbing content. Whereas on the web, when people are using the internet, they usually have some purpose. Not always, but usually, especially if you're on a search engine, you have an intent. You're searching with intent. You're either researching something or you're ready to buy. I think that's why those channels are so effective, is because people are already further down the funnel. When you're driving in your car and all you want to do is listen to music and you hear this advertisement, it has to catch your attention. It has to be goofy. It has to be salesy. That's why it works that way. I mean, that's really, I think, what it comes down to. But the web is totally different, and I think people still kind of waste time online, and I think more so with Facebook and social channels these days. But there's way more sensitive to attention-grabbing messages. It has to be way more authentic, and people expect things for free. I mean, everything is a freemium model, where nowadays it's like if you try to sell software and charge people, they're like offended. So it's like you sort of, people have that expectation. So it's been set. So if you can find ways to give away a little, where and that's a clever thing to do. If you find a way to give something of value away, it's free. People love free stuff. They're gonna like you for it. So
I would say follow up, and this is very, goes with everything you guys were saying about it's kind of a two-way. There's more to be focusing on the consumer end and their involvement. So what would you basically, and I'll let anybody take it who jumps in first, what do consumers, customers want out of engaging with the brand on social media? Is it just, as you were saying, is it giveaways? Is it something more? What are the consumers you've seen, and what are they looking for from your social media?
They want value. I mean, there's a lot of offers going on right now, but that's at a very slow adoption rate. And quite honestly, unless you're willing to give away something spectacular, people aren't really converting on it. They're not grabbing that. There's cases where that's not necessarily true, when you can really get people to, when you kind of change behavior and they know they go to your site and they're going to get a discount. Some restaurants have used it really effectively for happy hour promotions and stuff like that. But at a high level, you really need to be providing value that's more than just here's 15% off your next visit. You need to make their life easier in some regards. And that's what people are really looking for out of brands. They want the transparency, like Yasmin talked about before. They want to have that personal connection with the brand. And there's been some statistics that have come out as well that people care more about that personal connection to the brand than they do care about the free giveaway, which is kind of counterintuitive to a lot of marketers in particular. We just naturally assume that people want free stuff. And it's kind of coming out that social media gets its power because people crave that personal connection to the brand, and that's more powerful than a coupon.
Absolutely. I think part of this is finding out from your customers. What do they want? What matters to them? Because a lot of times we just kind of assume what's important, and it may be that all they want is some information, or again that personal connection. And so once you've identified your customers or your clients, asking them what do you need, what's important to you, because they then become a great guideline for what direction you should go. Mm-hmm. And to that point, with regards to information, with the internet now, I mean, there's so much information out there. In fact, there's an abundant amount of information, and so the challenge is to distill it down to what's important. And whereas back in the day when if you had the information, you were the expert, and that was the value that you provided. Well, nowadays anybody can be an expert. So then the shift is to, are you a trusted, advisor? Are you someone with that information that you feel connects and understands you, that you do trust? And that then becomes your differentiating, opportunity rather than just information too. So really going back to, what is it, what matters to your audience and your customers then, and using that as the incentive to engage.
Well, I want to get to, specifics to help people, start to understand, where should they be going on top of, looking at their entire, marketing scheme is what would you guys each say, and I'll start at the end over here. What social networks would you say are worth spending your time and effort on?
I think that really depends on the business, How many of you in here have local businesses where you have a physical local presence, or you're driving people to a local address? About half. Okay, so I think in that case, you're effective. Well, the first thing I'll say, if you haven't done this, is getting your physical address and your location listed on all the directory sites you can. That's like a very low cost, and it's probably the most direct, easy way to help you with search engine optimization. So getting on super pages and Bing and Google Local and all of these local listings, local map sites, that's super important for a local business. And leveraging that and making sure your information is consistent across all of those different directory listings is really important. So that's one simple thing. But then from there, I think it's about clear communication. The reason you all are here is because you have some competitive advantage. You have some value that you're providing people, and that's why you're able to grow and you have a business. So trying to distill that into bite-sized messages and communicate that value effectively through these channels. So, and I think it's also about an integrated approach to marketing. if you have other types of advertising that you do, if they're print or radio, then integrate that. Let it flow through social media. So make sure that messaging or that campaign that you might be running, if it's a promotion or an offer, and you're doing it in one channel, try to make it relevant for all the other channels like Facebook, let's say, or Twitter, or in some cases, you know, if you have a very niche market, if you're, let's say you're a chiropractor, you might go onto forums where you do a search for what other people, what your customers might be searching for, like my back hurts. Find out what the top ranking websites are where people are asking questions to find answers, and then go and give them answers. Go and sign up for those websites and provide content that people will value. Then they'll look to you as an expert, like Yasmin was saying. You know, they'll look to you as someone who's giving them something for nothing, and then they can start doing research on who is this person, are they local? I mean, that's all, I think it takes time, but I'd say starting with that organic approach of finding the different channels and forums where your customers are already engaging in very specific conversations about your business. Find those channels, focus there, and whether that means commenting on blog posts or responding to questions and answers in forums, that's all part of the whole dialogue.
Any of you have anything to add
You know,
about where to focus? I mean, it's, you know, strategy makes sense, and there's so many out there, so it's very difficult to hone in, but if you had anything to add.
You know, I'm not sure. You did a really nice job there, but it's kind of like what we've been saying all along. It's like figuring out where your client plays, you know,
Yeah.
and but also I think also like what Salar said is it can be you know, a component of your other marketing pieces that you're doing. Or I was talking about that a little bit earlier. You know, how many of you have the newsletter that you send out right now? Some of you, yeah, and you do some blogging. Do you guys do social media right now? Are you guys like up on a few of you? Okay, great. Yeah, so it's like you're a piece of your whole plan, and figuring out, you know, like Salar said, what kind of information your customers want, and it's okay to ask. You know, you can do a survey and ask them, what kind of information would you like to hear?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. One thing I'll say about branding too, because it's all part of the trust factor. That's why branding is so important, is that people are going to connect with you, and they want to connect with a brand. They want to humanize a brand. And I think what I've found in business, in my own business, is the more I invest in that, and you know, there has to be substance behind it, but the image is very important because that's the first impression people have of you. And so the more you can invest in making that image as high quality or as relevant to your demographic, the better, because it's going to build more trust. People who do business with you want to do business with people who they think are going to be around in 10 years, who think that they value their business. If I come to your website and it's just not organized and it doesn't have the content I want and the branding is off, I'm going to think, you know, I'll do a quick search and find your competitor. If they have a cleaner, friendlier, more inviting brand, that alone will have a huge influence on my decision to go with one or another company. I think that's a very important factor, and that's why it's like there's so much to do before you start spreading your message, because once people start hearing your message and then come seeking you, they better like what they find. And I think the more you invest in the look and feel and quality of your content, the more you're showing people that, hey, we're willing to invest in ourselves. We believe in ourselves. We're investing in how we present our company, and that speaks volumes. I think is, you know, that's always been my view on growing business, is really invest in it. Position yourself as a quality brand, because people want to do business with other quality companies. I think that's a huge part of it. That's why people love Apple computers, because of that, you know, amazing attention to quality and detail and branding.
Well, to kind of go off of that, and you're talking about investment and, you know, when it comes to small business budgets, so then how much, you know, investment of time, how many hours per week should, let's say, a business devote to social media?
Well, that's it's hard to get really specific with these kind of things because it really does vary so widely based on who your customer is and how much time they spend. You know, if you're targeting C-suite executives, so like, you know, C-level CEOs, CFOs, they're not spending a lot of time on social media engaging with brands. Especially if you're selling to them, that's not what they want to play in. They're going on social media to look at their grandkids or their kids to see what they're doing. So it really, you know, it's really hard for us. You know, you can ask specific questions and tell us what your business is, and we can give you very specific answers. But it's, you know, it takes more time on the front end. It really does. You're going to have to spend a lot of time getting yourself set up, really thinking about what your message is, making sure that message is consistent across whatever channels that you find are the best for you. And kind of going back to that first question, one thing you can do if you're collecting email addresses is you can do something that marketers call an email scrub. And so you can load those email messages onto Facebook, you know, like find your friends. And you can load those emails in and see how many people are on that network. Or are they on there? Are they playing there? But you know, Nicole's point about the survey, and I personally, I would not go towards something like SurveyMonkey or something, some kind of anonymous, unfriendly survey. I'd reach out directly. I'd call people, you know, and everything. You know, it's kind of like networking for business. You're networking with customers, and every time, you know, take people to coffee, and ask them questions about what they went through. And every time you're done, say, who else should I be talking with? And you're like, oh, you need to talk to Jim, because Jim had this experience and he really knows about this. So it's, I mean, exactly how much time
Yeah, it's
you're
going to be, it sounds like it's, you know, in a lot of this, it's very specified to the business, and a lot of people ask, you know, should I have a staff person dedicated to this? Should I do it once a week? So it's really going to, sounds like it really depends on the type
I will
of
say
business.
it takes a lot of time. I mean, you're not getting into this for a little time. It's not like I'm gonna put an hour into this a week or something. Social media, to do correctly, takes a lot of time because it takes consistency. If you just post something every once in a while, no one cares, you're not going to be on the radar. You need to be posting daily. It really takes a lot of time, and creating that content takes time. But there's things that you can do. I mean, you know, one of the most important things that most people totally space is utilizing other people or engaging with other people. You know, everyone thinks about this as like a me first kind of thing, and it's so easy to be narcissistic in social media. It kind of lends itself to narcissism, I think. But you know, everyone's asking, why aren't people engaging with me? Well, go out and engage with people. You know, find people that are maybe partner companies to what you're doing, that or your customers directly, and engage with them. And then there's tons of people that are putting content out there right now, so you don't have to create all the content that you make. You definitely want to have some originality, even if you're you know, reposting something that someone else is posting, and I do this all the time. You know, I subscribe to tons of digital marketing newsletters, and every Monday I go through a huge amount of articles and try to download as much information as I can, and then there's a program called Hootsuite that allows you to schedule posting on various social networks. And I'll load all that in for Twitter and for LinkedIn, and I'll load that for the week, and I'll make little comments. You know, I'll say what I thought about that article, or I'll pull out a great quote that I really like out of that article and include the link. So I'm not writing an article a day. I can't. My job is way too demanding for me to do that. The one caveat on that I will say is you can't do that with Facebook unless you're directly going through Facebook. Facebook does have, for brands, they allow you to schedule posts through Facebook. Third parties, which would be like a Hootsuite or a TweetDeck or something like that, they don't like that, and they have an algorithm that rates content, and they slam you. They drop you out of people's radar because they don't want you using another company to post on Facebook. So Twitter doesn't do that. LinkedIn doesn't do that. So you can use those platforms, but Facebook, unfortunately, you have to do it the long way.
Just to kind of emphasize one point that Justin made is, you know, it's really about community, and it's also about your customers. And part of your customers is, you know, identify who are your top, you know, 10 best clients or your customers here. Invite them together for a customer appreciation event,
and talk to them. Where do you hang out? Do you use social media? What's important to you? What are, what are the things that you want to know? And based on that, craft your marketing strategy around that based on your best customers, because they are then the ones that you want to attract rather than the masses. And sometimes it's within your best customers that you can build further relationships that they're referring you people like them, where they